Welcome to Crime Maze. In this video we are going to talk about top 5 horrific unsolved murders. So before starting this video, like this video, and subscribe to Crime Maze for future updates. Murders are usually distressing, but there are those that are even more so. These murders were heinous, almost unfathomable in their heinousness. The crime shocked communities and perplexed police, leading to decades of unanswered questions, as years went without an arrest or even a credible suspect. Time looks back at some of the most high-profile crimes from the previous 150 years, as Netflix investigates the cold case murder of a Baltimore nun in new docuseries The Keepers. Their specifics differ, but they all have one thing in common: a serial killer who has never been apprehended. Here are 5 of history's most perplexing murder cases. Number 5. London was tormented by Jack the Ripper. Over a century ago, London's most renowned serial killer terrorized the East End by preying on prostitutes. Jack the Ripper gained his name by murdering and mutilating at least 5 women. In 1888, fear intensified, as the bodies began to pile up near each other during a 3-month period. When word of a second female victim broke, the community was horrified to the point of panic, according to the Morning Post at the time. The killing was described as barbarous by the local media, who added that the manner of the murder was too horrific for description. Because of his trademark and grisly way of murder, as well as his knife skills, local officials initially suspected the perpetrator was a butcher or a doctor. According to author Dave Yost, who explores the 5 deaths in his book Elizabeth Stride and Jack the Ripper, the victims of the so-called Whitechapel murders, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly all had their throats slashed, and most had their stomachs slit and organs ripped out before being dumped on the streets. Each victim was known to be a strong drinker and a prostitute, according to the FBI, which investigated the case in 1988 at the request of a movie production firm. They were all targeted and slain in the early morning hours because they were easily accessible. Despite having all eyes on the case, investigators were never able to identify the assailant. Local investigations were hampered, according to the FBI, because forensic technology and other advanced methods of adequately probing homicides were non-existent at the time. In 1888, the National Archives collected letters from several law enforcement officials depicting overburdened police departments. Charles Warren, the Metropolitan Police's chief commissioner at the time, requested assistance from the City of London Police. Warren added, "We are flooded with proposals and names of suspects. Countless amateur and expert historians and criminologists have speculated on the killer's identity, but it appears that Jack the Ripper kept his identity a mystery until his death." Number 4. The gruesome demise of the Black Dahlia made news. Evidence relating to the assassination of Elizabeth Short, dubbed the Black Dahlia. Evidence relating to the assassination of Elizabeth Short, dubbed the Black Dahlia. A mother and her child were stopped in their tracks by the sight. A naked woman was sleeping on the sidewalk just feet away. She was slashed in half at the waist, and there was no blood on her. In 1947, the assassination of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short made national headlines, and newspapers dubbed her the Black Dahlia because of her dark hair and apparent preference for black clothing. Authorities said Short, a Massachusetts native who had gone to California in search of celebrity, was drained dry before being abandoned in a vacant lot in a Los Angeles residential neighborhood. According to FBI records, her body seemed to have been carefully dissected, and one breast had been removed. It's unknown how the ambitious actor ended up in such a horrific situation. The high-profile crime has been attributed to dozens of people. The FBI, which was assisting local officials at the time, said it conducted background checks on probable suspects, and conducted interviews around the country. The case has remained unresolved since none of the confessors looked to be telling the truth. A novel about the murder was published in 1987, and a film starring Josh Hartnett, Hilary Swank, Aaron Eckhart, and M.I.A. Kirshner was released in 2006. The Los Angeles Police Department recently told Time that it is still looking into the cold case, but gave no further details. Officer Norma Eisenman of the Los Angeles Police Department remarked, "It's an unresolved case. According to the detectives, there is no new information." Number 3. The Zodiac Killer teased cops with cryptic clues. On November 11, 1969, a cryptogram was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. On November 11, 1969, a cryptogram was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. The Zodiac Killer wasn't your typical assassin. Instead of shunning the spotlight, he seemed to relish it, teasing authorities with cryptic letters and clues while he left a trail of murder in his wake. In 1968 and 1969, the Zodiac Killer murdered 5 individuals in Northern California, allegedly at random. In letters to the police, he claimed there were hundreds more victims, but this was never proven. In December 1968, 2 adolescents were shot and killed in a parking lot, which launched his murderous rampage. Another 2 persons were shot in a parked automobile around 7 months later, but one of them survived. According to the San Francisco Examiner, which received the mysterious notes, that's when local media started receiving letters from someone anonymously claiming responsibility for the slayings. The letters, according to the publication, contained coded notes detailing the killer's motivation, as well as a key to help readers figure out who he was. In an August letter, he stated, "This is the Zodiac speaking." According to FBI archives, he said, "I like killing people because it is so much joy. Killing wild game in the forest is more enjoyable because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The Zodiac Killer went on to stab 2 more people in late September, after authorities failed to decode the code exposing his identity. One of the victims lived, while the other passed away. According to the Examiner, the killer struck again about 2 weeks later, fatally shooting a 29-year-old cab driver. The Zodiac sent a piece of his newest victim's bloody clothing to the Chronicle newspaper a few days later. No suspects have been identified in the case as of yet. The inquiry is still ongoing, according to the San Francisco Police Department. Number 2. Rappers Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. were gunned down 6 months apart. Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G., 2 rap superstars, were shot and killed 6 months apart in the late 1990s, rocking the music industry. The assassinations occurred during a period of fierce rivalry between their competing record labels. Both rappers were top artists for their respective record labels. Many people believed the murders were a sign that music feuds had gotten out of hand. On September 13, 1996, Shakur was slain in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The 25-year-old superstar's Death Row record label was at odds with its rival, Bad Boy, at the time. Bad Boy's Christopher Wallace, also known as the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, or Biggie, was assassinated in a similar manner 6 months later. As he was exiting a music industry party in Los Angeles, the rapper was tragically shot in a drive-by. According to the FBI, the 2 superstars were buddies when they were both signed to Bad Boy Records. The FBI investigated Biggie's death but closed the case in 2005. After Tupac was arrested for rape and Biggie rose to fame, the 2 became estranged. Tupac later transferred to Death Row Records. It's unknown if the rivalry played a factor in either of the murders. Both cases baffled investigators, in part due to recalcitrant witnesses. The murder mysteries have spawned their own set of hypotheses, one of which alleges that both rappers are still alive and staged their own deaths. The megastars' families and friends are still grieving. Sean "Diddy" Combs paid tribute to his late friend Biggie in an Instagram video in March, on the 20th anniversary of his death. He said, "On this day, we're going to focus on him since we miss him. And now, 20 years later, time has healed all wounds, but this one hasn't." Number 1. JonBenet Ramsey was found dead in her family home. Patsy Ramsey carries a reward sign for any information regarding their daughter JonBenet Ramsey's death on May 1, 1997, in Boulder, Colorado. Patsy Ramsey carries a reward sign for any information regarding their daughter, JonBenet Ramsey's death on May 1, 1997, in Boulder, Colorado. Getty Images. Denver Post. Helen H. Richardson, in the months following the 6-year-old beauty queen's death, in the basement of her family's Colorado home, JonBenet Ramsey's beautiful, smiling face appeared on newspaper front pages and television screens around the country. The crime shocked the residents of Boulder, Colorado's calm and affluent neighborhood. On the day after Christmas in 1996, JonBenet, a beauty pageant winner, was discovered beaten and strangled with duct tape around her mouth and throat. This was enough to get national attention, but JonBenet's own family was swiftly scrutinized, and many people who had been following the story began to wonder if her parents were somehow involved. Patricia, JonBenet's mother, told authorities she discovered her daughter missing when she awoke early the next morning. She reported a kidnapping to 911, saying she discovered an almost 3-page ransom note seeking $118,000. JonBenet's father, John, said authorities he found his daughter's body in the basement hours later. According to the Denver Post, an autopsy found that JonBenet died of asphyxiation induced by strangling. Her death was determined to be a homicide. The Ramseys were instantly shrouded in suspicion, although no charges were ever brought against them in connection with JonBenet's death. During a CNN interview in January, her parents addressed the rumors for the first time. According to the Washington Post, Jonnette Ramsey described the notion that his family was involved in the crime as nauseating beyond imagination. In May, he assured reporters once more, "I did not kill my daughter." Boulder police said the investigation is still ongoing 20 years later. However, officials declined to comment on the matter last November. Boulder Police Chief Greg Tester stated, "Our aim continues to be an arrest and successful prosecution. We haven't given up and won't." The 20th anniversary of JonBenet's death was marked by a flurry of major network programs, and new documentaries delving into possible suspects. Burke Ramsey, JonBenet's brother, also spoke out for the first time. On Dr. Phil, the 29-year-old admitted that when he initially learned of his sister's death, he fell into tears. Burke Ramsey claimed, "My father told me JonBenet is in heaven now, and he started sobbing, and then I started weeping. I was thinking, how is this even possible? I began to cry. I don't recall saying anything at first, I didn't believe it." What do you think about this video? Which of the following top 5 horrific unsolved murders you find most interesting? Do let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.